There is a lot of moving parts right now with Canadian politics. One set of events could set a chain reaction to lead to many different paths. Now, is prorogation on the table? You've had Liberal MPs like Chrystia Freeland come out and just without any hesitation say no. So I know a lot of people, I mean, myself included, we don't trust what she says. Of course, she's a liar. But in this instance, I think that she may be correct. So I'm going to take that at face value and say, okay, prorogation is not on the table. What can happen next? Well, the Bloc Québécois is still pushing for old age security increase in pension by the end of October 29th, which by my watch is just a couple of days away, or a few days. So if they don't get what they want, they're going to vote or put forward a motion of non-confidence. So we're potentially going to see another vote of non-confidence. This would be the third one since they've come back from the summer break. And I mean, it could actually work because of the kind of thing that's just popped up in the past few days, this rebel alliance of Liberal MPs internally that have called not only for Justin Trudeau to resign or to step down, but they have said that they are going to vote in favor of a non-confidence. So we're taking a look at that just to back up everything I say, because don't take my word for it. Let's look at all of the data. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And without further ado, let's get into the Bloc Québécois and their stance and how they're saying that even if prorogation does happen, which it won't, it's not going to block what they are already setting in motion, which is pretty interesting.
You are listening to Yves-François Blanchet, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, saying that, reiterating the threat, if you will, or the proposal, depending on the language you want to use, that the Bloc Québécois has put forward on two bills regarding pension increases for younger seniors as well as supply management, saying October 29th is the deadline, and if the Liberals don't come around to their proposals, that they will open dialogue, in his words, with opposition parties to overthrow the government, saying that he expects the Conservatives to do this, and the NDP, we'll have to see if they rally to help out the Liberals. He said, in terms of a motion of privilege that has been brought forward by the Conservatives that has arguably paralyzed a lot of what goes on in the House of Commons. He said, the leader of the Bloc Québécois says the government has been unable to achieve anything. Why? There's nothing happening because the Liberal Party is being eaten from inside and attacked from outside over what Justin Trudeau is going to decide to do about his future and what the caucus is going to tell him about whether he should stay or go. Karina Roman has been following all this and joins me live from outside. You know, some interesting comments there, some language there. Eaten from the outside and attacked from, eaten from the inside and attacked from the outside. I think there would be some that might be in agreement that that is a little bit of what appears to be going on.
And
he's getting attacked from every angle.
That the focus right now does not seem for the government to be governing, but to be trying to sort out its own affairs within its own caucus and within its own party. And that is the case that Blanchet is making. That said, I mean, the government would obviously say the opposite, that what they're trying to do is focus on what Canadians need to be done. And it's only us who keep asking questions about his leadership that seems to detract attention from all the things that they're trying to do. The other thing, though, in terms of the paralysis that we're seeing there because of the motion of privilege that continues to be debated, which holds pretty much all government business up and off. Blanchet not saying that they're going to help in any way, you know, in terms of being willing to help with a closure motion or time allocation motion, but saying that it's symbolic or a representation of a government that has stalled. Obviously, everyone's pointing the blame at everyone else. The Liberals saying it's the Conservatives' fault, the Conservatives saying it's the Liberals' fault, the NDP actually siding mostly with the Conservatives on this. So that sort of seems to be a big mess. And then, of course, this October 29th deadline. He says it stays. He says they've been flexible enough. And, there was enough time there for the Liberals to come to the table with what they wanted. So he's not changing that. Interesting that in terms of one of the bills, for sure, that was definitely in the Liberals' hands. That would be the supplementary money for younger seniors needing a royal recommendation from the government, since it's a private member's bill that actually outlines some form of quite large spending by the government. But the other thing, the supply management bill that's before the Senate, the Liberal government has very little control over the pace that goes through. And there have been letters back and forth with the government saying, hey, you want to move that along a little faster. Don't know if that's an indication that they actually do want it moved along. And the Senate kind of coming back and saying, hey, stay out of our business here. So yeah, it seems like what we've said last week is true this week. October 29th looms. So do the leadership woes. That we're not really progressed much past that.
Okay, but just to kind of, are there opposition days coming up? I mean, there probably won't be a budget until the winter if the government survives that. I mean, I guess some of the questioning from reporters there was when the Bloc leader is like saying, yeah, but, are you going to have an opportunity? You can start talks. And then, of course, as we keep saying, it would depend on the NDP also wanting to overthrow the government.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Like the Bloc and the Conservatives can't do this alone in terms of taking down the government. But there isn't going to be an opposition day as long as they're debating this motion of privilege. And I need to point out again that if this were to actually end, there's another privilege motion unrelated to this that would also then have to get debated. So those aren't unreasonable questions. I'm not sure that he was ready with an answer. The other question that some of us have been asking is, will there be a fall economic statement this year? Because never mind the budget, that often happens in the fall, and it too would be a confidence motion. But it's not statutory. There's nothing forcing the government to bring out a fall economic statement that would actually need to be voted on.
In my own personal opinion, I think the funniest part about all of this is the fact that Justin Trudeau is getting attacked from all angles. They were absolutely correct. He's getting attacked from the left. He's getting attacked from the right. He's getting attacked from internally. It's not looking good. And even the mainstream media is not really in support, or not that much more in support of Justin Trudeau. Their support for him is coming down. Nobody is amping up their support for him. Nobody's going, come on, guys, we need to rally behind Trudeau more than ever to fight the good fight. It's quite the opposite. You even have the lifelong Liberal MPs that are the Trudeau's trustee appointees that stand right next to him that are saying, yeah, I mean, we still support Trudeau, but it's always for now. For now, we support him. Let's take a look at this next video here, how the clock is running out.
Justin Trudeau will have more negotiating to do next week. The Bloc Québécois set a deadline for Liberal cooperation, saying if they don't get it, they will look to bring down the minority government. CTV's Rachel Aiello joins us now. Rachel, the leader jumped from one challenge to the next.
Marilla, after brushing off a deadline from his MPs, another ultimatum tied to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's ability to stay in power is set to expire next week.
From the outset of the fall sitting, Justin Trudeau has relied on votes from the Bloc Québécois and the NDP to keep his minority Liberal government alive. But next Tuesday, the clock will run out on the 5 weeks Yves-François Blanchet gave the Liberals to heed his demands. The Bloc wanted help passing bills to boost seniors' benefits and protect supply management, or they'd start talking to the other opposition parties about triggering a snap election.
So we're not inflexible. We've been open enough.
With no signs the Liberals are ready to make a deal, they're likely to lose the Bloc's backing, leaving the NDP to be their only potential parliamentary dance partner. A potential brief reprieve? NDP leader Jagmeet Singh revealed this week that he won't be using the only NDP Opposition Day motion of the fall to try to bring the government down.
Different from the Conservatives, our focus is to get things done for people.
That said, it remains to be seen when the next opposition day will be, or when another non-confidence motion could be moved, as the House of Commons remains at a standstill, with the Conservatives and Liberals still fighting over releasing unredacted Green Tech Fund documents. Marilla?
And to be honest, we could very well see another vote of non-confidence happen as early as next week. I mean, in theory, we could see it on Wednesday, since Tuesday is when the clock finally runs out with the Bloc Québécois. So, I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But something big is going to happen this upcoming week, and I think we can all feel it. At least that's my personal opinion, and now I'd love to know yours. And then I do have one final video here pulled up. Let's take a look here at kind of what is happening next. Trudeau is being told by his MPs to step down. He's telling them that he's not going to. So what is really going to happen moving forward?
You know, there were just so many things this week that quickened the pulse of Canadian politics, and almost all of them involved the Liberal caucus, the Liberal cabinet, and the Liberal leader.
I'm a member of his cabinet. Obviously, we support him.
Any minute spent on this garbage is a minute that's not spent on Pierre Poilievre.
Liberal Party is an institution in this country. It's bigger than one person, one leader.
Is the caucus united behind you?
The Liberal Party is strong and united. It's the decision of the leader of the party as to whether he stays on as leader. So that is Mr. Trudeau's decision.
So are you planning on staying as Prime Minister past October 28th?
Yes.
I wouldn't call it delusional, but he's seeing something that I don't see, that my constituents don't see.
So I think we need to focus on Canadians.
You think this is just going to go away?
I think so, yeah.
So has this push for Justin Trudeau to step down been pushed off? Or is there another chapter in this story coming next week? We have lots to talk about with our party insiders. Greg McEachern, he'll be quiet. He's a former Liberal ministerial staffer. Fred Delory, he'll be buoyant. He is a former Conservative campaign manager. And Melody Richer will tie it all together. She is the former communications director for the NDP. I don't know where to begin. So, Greg, I'm going to let you decide where to begin. I don't know if you saw the clip from Wayne Long today. He did an interview with Rosie for Rosemary Barton Live on Sunday and said he described what the Prime Minister did as flipping them off, which doesn't sound like a happy thing.
So we can begin with Mel. Okay, so I want to pull back a little bit on this. And I know that there's a lot of the conversation about the dissidents, how many, who signed the letter. What I do know, though, is that in the group that's named or numbered, they're not really named, there are more people than that group that are unhappy.
That is true.
But what they're looking at and what they look to the, I guess we call them the dissidents for purposes of our coffee tonight. The dissidents, what was the plan following? And that's where I think things kind of fell down for them. But that doesn't mean that everybody is super happy in the Liberal caucus and what will happen following. I think that there are people that feel that there's not enough runway for a leadership. And the phrase that kept being repeated to me over and over again from members of Parliament was it could be messy if they have a leadership. So what...
As opposed to this clean process they're going through right now.
Okay, more mess, greater mess. So that's part of it as well. I think the sobering fact that the supply and confidence deal doesn't exist does not give them the confidence that they could have a leadership. Right. They could plan for one in say early 2025. So this is where we're at. But what I would suggest that the Prime Minister do is think about how he got in this situation. And that's when I say I want to pull back and take a look at this. Your caucus is so unhappy that this is where it's gotten. Fred and I were talking earlier, we talked after the St. Paul's by-election. And the decision not to have a caucus meeting after that event might have been good politics and good comms at the time. It prevented, your tribe from standing outside the door of a meeting room or leaks from a Zoom call. But as Fred said at the time, this is their opportunity to come back with something else, another plan. And that latter half didn't happen. Right. And I think that's been the big issue. Had they had that, because then when they had the loss of LaSalle, that's when they really lost Quebec caucus. So the Prime Minister has to ask himself, why did this get to this point? And I think the answer starts to get to a very, very small circle around him and the advice he's given. I heard from a Quebec, very strong Quebec Liberal this week, where they said that they were curious about where the
the Prime Minister's thinking was. Was he in his own echo chamber? And they felt when they saw the interview with Nathaniel Erskine Smith, they thought that he was. And that's what really upset them, scared them, whatever word you want to use.
So, Fred, I remember you saying, I think it was you said this summer, and I heard this from people close to the Prime Minister when the demand was for a summer caucus meeting after Toronto St. Paul's, that, we don't want the media spectacle, as Greg outlined it. Everyone camped outside the door of a caucus meeting with leaks coming out. What did we get on Wednesday, right? We got that in the more primetime season with less runway to fix problems. What do you make of where things are? And do you think the dissidents, as I've dubbed them, can keep this going, or are they done?
I'd almost call them rebels. Because they're not. They don't seem quite united. They don't seem to have any real leadership. They seem to be all.
I never thought I would be voting for or supporting the idea of, gay, go Liberals, go. But when it comes to this, that's kind of where I find myself, between a rock and a hard place, because I definitely don't agree with the ideologies of the Liberal Party of Canada and most liberal ideologies here in Canada right now, at least. But I find myself just really rooting on these rebel liberal MPs going, come on, guys, you can do it. But let's go, push it forward. And it's kind of funny. So I suppose in order to get Trudeau out, we have to support the idea of the rebel liberals of, putting forward or voting in favor of a non-confidence. It's kind of weird. That's how weird Canada is right now. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what it is.
All over the place with what they're trying to do. There's no focused attack here. A number of them seem quite committed to try to remove the Prime Minister as leader of the party. But there doesn't seem to, I'm not seeing much of a strategy. They're just doing weird tactics that seem to be failing. But back to, the issue at hand, where the reason why they're in this spot, obviously the polls and whatnot, but I think it's a lot of these people would be okay or at least committed to keep going down this path with the Prime Minister if he had a plan, if he came back from the summer with a plan. And that's why I said after the by-elections in St. Paul's, don't have that caucus meeting, but sit down with your core team and come up with a focused plan and a strategy that you can sell to your team and tell your people that you're going to campaign on. This is our path to the next election. They have not done anything like that. It's still business as usual. The House has been bogged down for weeks with nothing happening, obviously with the Conservative motion on that. But there's nothing happening here, and Trudeau's team are not presenting anything. And that's what if they don't fix that, this could continue to fester.
Mel, where do you think things are? I mean, some people revealed themselves as a Scooby-Doo moment, where they stood up and read out the letter, Patrick Weiler, and then others sort of revealed where they stood on this issue. I mean, is it done? Can it move ahead, or do you think the Prime Minister has pushed it off and now they just deal with where they are?
Right. Well, I think it's super interesting. When we had first started hearing either rumors or, when you and other colleagues have broke the news about which MPs were the ones who were, creating a lot of noise behind this, it kind of seemed like it was a lot of MPs in the Atlantic provinces. But what we've seen this last week is it's coast to coast.
We're just the loud ones. They're just not the only ones. But,
but you know what I mean? What we saw this week was actually it's across the country.
Yeah, Patrick Weiler's a Vancouver MP.
Exactly.
Right?
And your break earlier of who is the holder of the letter is a Quebec MP. So that to me is bad news. It's not just one region that's having a hard time with the Prime Minister and who's being told by their constituents that the Prime Minister has to go. This is across the country. So how do you fix that? And to the point earlier that you maybe saved some time in the summer, you're now 4 months later, to your point, folks are paying way more attention in October than they would have in July. You haven't gotten your MPs on board. You've lost in Montreal. You've lost your campaign director, and you still don't have a message. You still don't know why you're running to be Prime Minister, and you're not communicating that. So I don't know how you fix that publicly, but how you fix that with your MPs either. And it's interesting, we heard MP Drouin say, or he was asked the question, do you think this is just going to go away? And he said, yeah, I think it's just going to go away. And that just seems to be the strategy for the Liberals. If we just wait it out, things will get better. If we just wait, people start listening to us and liking us again. And that, to me, just seems like such an entitled approach to not just what's happening internally, but to what people are feeling and the anxiety that people are feeling externally with this Prime Minister.
So I want to ask you a question. When earlier in the summer we did a What to Watch in the fall, and you talked about the supply and confidence agreement maybe going away because it wasn't working for your party, in your view, that the NDP. I wonder if it also didn't work for the Liberals politically, in the sense that, I don't mean in terms of polling and credit, bought them legislative peace, but did it make them too politically comfortable in that they weren't on the crisis footing, a minority government. They had COVID during the first minority, and then they had supply and confidence in the second minority. Did it make them kind of too comfortable and a little bit, I don't know if lazy is the right word, but lacking urgency?
Maybe a little bit. And what I would say is, if you look back to before the agreement, I kind of had that feeling a little bit before, and maybe that's because of the deal or the comfortableness of the deal, but I also think other stuff, and the pandemic and there was obviously world crises happening at the same time. It just always felt like, or it has felt like for years now, that the government is unable to anticipate anything, unable to anticipate the anger, unable to anticipate that folks are having a hard time, unable to anticipate their own caucus feeling frustrated. And it just seems like no matter what, the government is unable to get ahead of anything and get their message out. And not only are they, stuck reacting, they're not reacting very well either. So I think that's one of the big challenges.
So Greg, a lot of the people who signed the letter or support the people who signed the letter, they're talking about scenarios that they fear of, like a demolition in the next election. They point to the Kathleen Wynne Liberals who did well in 2014 and then got wiped.
The thing about all the Liberals banding together is if it's not successful, if they don't all get up together at the same time and either vote in favor of non-confidence, if it's not a unanimous decision between all of these rebels, then the one, like let's say there's 30 of them, right? And 20 of them stand up to vote for non-confidence and the other 10 say, no, I chickened out, I can't do it. Those 20 that stood up, by the time that the vote of non-confidence goes around next week, by the time they're done voting, those 20 are likely not even going to have a job. They're going to be disowned by the Liberal Party, and it's just not going to be successful. So just like any rebel alliance, it all has to work together for it to actually happen, which is, go Rebels, go, I suppose.
Wiped out in 2018, if I have my years correct. And they're worried about that kind of a scenario. And they're arguing, and people said this at the microphone in caucus, that our polling ceiling goes up if we change leader, and we do have enough time to do a leadership. Doug Ford replaced Patrick Brown, Kathleen Wynne replaced Dalton McGuinty. National election, different thing, but this is the argument that I get the sense is happening inside Liberal circles. So what do you think happens next in all of this?
Well, the counter to that argument has always been Kim Campbell versus Brian Mulroney.
Of course, yeah.
And the people, my friends who worked on the 93 campaign for the PCs, I've asked them directly, do you think that if Brian Mulroney had ran, would the results have been the same? They would have lost, but they would not have been reduced to 2 seats. That's always been the pushback. I think what people are waiting is some sort of rallying cry from the Prime Minister. I've been saying this since I watched his interview with you in June. Tell me why you want another term. Tell me what this is about. And if you don't know, sit down with some people outside your circle and say, this is how people perceive you the best. And we're going to, we recommend you should run on this. But I think, there's a lot of minor irritants that add up. I heard, from one caucus member, and we all know this when a leader visits or a cabinet minister visits. If you're going to someone's backyard, tell them. That still happens, I'm told, that ministers are in people's ridings and they don't know.
Really?
One of the other things that I heard was, and I have some personal experience with this, is stop bringing plans to caucus. Don't bring us another plan. And it's on advertising, it's on this, and then nothing ever happens. This is why people, I think, in caucus are very fed up. I was actually told, and I believe I've said on this show, yeah, ads are coming. I didn't make that up. I didn't pull that out of the air.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. I'll look right in the camera and say, we want to be accurate here. So, so that was something that, I was safe to say, I was told that, watch for ads. I haven't seen them. So imagine if you're an elected person and your future is waiting on this.
Yeah, and Fred, I had an MP say to me that plans either don't materialize or they fail in what they called ruby red ridings, like Toronto St. Paul's and LaSalle Verdun, which is that's a pretty damning analysis.
Yeah, if they don't, if they're not putting forward the stuff and just telling the caucus that it's coming, you're going to continue to lose trust on these issues, and this is where this festers. And now we have it boiling over with this supposed letter, or this letter of mostly anonymous MPs, which is, at the same time, though, there's only 24 of them. Even if the Liberal Party had the Reform Act in place, where you could remove a leader, they wouldn't have enough to meet the threshold to have a vote. And then when you do sign that letter, it has to be public, so you have to be even braver.
I do think it's dangerous just to concentrate on that number and think those are the only people that are that unhappy. There are people that are that unhappy, but just don't see that that the dissidents are giving them a path forward.
Right. This is an interesting dynamic where the Conservative is saying it's only 24 and the Liberal saying it's actually large. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty wild on its own right there. But nonetheless, again, unless there is some form of like confirmation that if they do step forward and, you know, into the spotlight and they all come together and do their own rebel caucus type of press conference, right? And there's more than 24 and there's 30 or maybe even more. Again, it's only going to work if they know it's going to work and there's going to be some form of action that comes out of their standing up reaction, right? They're not going to risk their jobs to just do a little social media or a media stunt rather, and then not get anything out of it. And then they're going to be ostracized and likely kicked out of the party within like a very short amount of time. So it's this weird game of politics. It's this very weird game of politics that frankly, I've never personally seen this happen. I don't know if you have, but I think that this is very interesting.
Interesting, where there's no, like, there seems to be this rebel alliance has no leadership in itself. There are all these individuals who are not coordinating together, and it kind of feels like the Liberal government is a good microcosm of what we're seeing.
The reluctance, you know, like when this broke 2 weeks ago, I think we were here. You know, one of the things was I kept hearing is that they wanted it to get to the PM before it got to the media. And they obviously failed.
This is true. I mean, I don't know how the Toronto Star got it because we were on the air when Althea Ra's press published. I could not disclose to you at the time, but I was working on what I had heard about the document, you know, which became the letter and the signature effort and all these sorts of things. But it's kind of this decentralized, organic thing that almost has its roots, as I understand it, back at the London Summer Caucus, where a lot of people got upset with the way things are going there, Greg, and I realized who kindred spirits were, and they all started like talking on the hopes of things. Toronto St. Paul became an accelerant, then the other things happened, and here we are today, right? So like that's kind of how it started. There's no central leadership. So Mel, you have this 24. They haven't been revealed. There's some sense that when word of this got out, they were worried that loyalists were trying to infiltrate their ranks to find out exactly who was in it. And this is the cloak and dagger that's happening inside a government caucus that's won 3 elections.
Totally. And what's interesting is, you know, we were talking earlier that this doesn't seem to have made an impact like maybe we thought it would leading up to it, because it kind of feels like, okay, well, what happens next? But I think the only reason that is what we're thinking is because they weren't more strategic or weren't more maybe organized in their efforts. And that's likely why other folks aren't joining them, right? Because why put your name to a letter if it's just going to be the same, and then you piss everybody off that's going to be making the decisions at the end of the day and helping in the election. So I can appreciate why folks are a little bit wary. And of course, what this does at the end of the day is it makes, you know, listeners, it makes people at home trying to figure out who they're going to vote for in their next election think, oh, well, these people are a mess. They can't organize their own house. They can't clean up their own messes. What chance do they have to, you know, address the problems that I'm facing? And I think some caucus members and cabinet ministers probably know that. They probably know that if this is chaotic and there's some chaos, for lack of another word, inside their own caucus, folks at home will be even more likely to change the channel and to seek a different government. So that's probably what we're seeing too with that number versus other folks who are also upset.
Well, this happened in New Brunswick with Blaine Higgs, right? That he had a bunch of departures and a bunch of fights over policy direction, and it hurt him. Like it cost him his seat, it cost him his majority, and it was definitely a distraction. So, Greg, I wonder about this. After, you know, it was George Chahal who wrote the letter in June or July to ask for the caucus meeting after Toronto St. Paul's and got 8 other people to sign it, and it was rejected. So after making them wait until now, a very emotional 3-hour meeting where the Prime Minister said, I will take, I'm not convinced I have to go, but I'm going to reflect on this. 24 hours later, before lunch the next day, at a press conference on something unrelated, said, no, I'm staying and that's it, and we're going to find a way to do it. Does that help or hurt him in caucus, do you think?
I think it hurts them. I understand because there was a deadline and perhaps they're trying to show strength. But I go back to, the Prime Minister should be asking how he got in this situation. Look, I've done this with clients, is when the mistake happens, you acknowledge and apologize if it's, appropriate. You commit. The third part is to commit that it's not going to happen again. In the middle is you have to determine how it happened so you can prevent it from happening again. And what I'm nervous about is that there is not enough curiosity about why did this happen, the way it happened, when it happened, the Prime Minister was out of the country, all these things. There has to be some triggers for this. And part of it does go back to London, the caucus a year ago, where I think certain things were promised, people were led to believe. But again, if you raise your own expectations around, let's say, advertising, and you don't meet them, you can't be surprised that the people who believed you, who believe those expectations, are going to be somehow disappointed, and they're going to react.
Yeah, and there are just bizarre incidents of caucus management throughout this. This was first reported by the Toronto Star, but I had it confirmed to me this week that one of the communication staffers in the Prime Minister's office, Fred, told the MPs, don't talk to reporters, they'll trade your identity in return for access.
And they did talk to reporters, and that was extremely bizarre on its own, because you had some of these rebels go into the caucus meeting and they were talking to reporters, and then when they came out, they were talking to reporters, and it's like they were brainwashed. It's like they entered a cult. It's super bizarre. Justin Trudeau apparently cried in that caucus meeting. I saw that rhetoric circulating a little bit on X, but I haven't really been able to get any confirmations. Nonetheless, it just seems so bizarre that everything like this is happening at the same time, that you got the rebels kind of stepping into the spotlight just a little bit, just dipping their toes while we get closer and closer to the vote on confidence, the next vote on confidence potentially happening, with the Bloc not getting their demands from the Liberal government. So again, this week is going to be absolutely insane, and we might even get some bonus content. I mean, later today, some news, right? Later today or even tomorrow. So make sure that you're subscribed and you turn the little bell notification on so you can actually be notified of upcoming videos, because if shit hits the fan, politically speaking, and it likely will to some extent, there's going to be some form of breaking news in the next 48 to 72 hours. You're going to want to be one of the first ones to know. So that's the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already. I've shared my opinion. Now I'd love to know yours, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.